Crime, Wine, and Chaos contains adult language and graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
Is this the real life, or is this just fantasy chaos, kids? I'm Amber.
I'm Naomi. I'm pretty sure this is Crime, Wine, and Chaos.
Oh, man. Mm-hmm. Allegedly.
Hi, sister.
Hi, sister. Hello.
How are you today?
I'm doing okay-ish. Work's been cray-cray. So, it's feast or famine at that job.
Yeah.
Which is weird. I can be bored and then overwhelmed, like, within the same day.
Oh, interesting. I mean, it keeps you on your toes, right?
I don't need to be kept on my toes.
Oh, I mean, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm too
How
old
are you?
for that.
Yeah, that's gonna end in a heart attack at this age. I don't need that.
Or at least like a Charlie horse in your.
Sure. Yes. Fuck, man. Yep. Mm-hmm. I need an even flow. Just like Eddie Vedder says.
Just like Eddie Vedder says. That's interesting because I just watched this multi-part documentary on the history of Lollapalooza.
Oh, as a chaos story or for funsies?
No, just for funsies. I was just taking a break and I didn't really know. Anyway, Perry Farrell started Lollapalooza as like a farewell tour when he decided that Jane's Addiction wasn't going to be a band anymore. And so they did a summer tour in 1991 and they had, what would later become an absolutely incredible lineup looking back, including Ice-T and Nine Inch Nails. And
what
and
a
Jane's
vibe.
I know. And like Living Color, I think. So it was like,
interesting.
Yeah, it was wild. It was all indie underground whatever, right? Which was, Jane's Addiction's vibe and Perry Farrell's vibe. And anyway, and then what happened after that and what it became. And basically Perry Farrell's like, he's living high on the hog now. He went through some lean years, but he's living high on the hog now because,
sure.
Well, they hooked up with the guys that run Austin City Limits and they do like a permanent venue in Austin and they wanted to do another permanent venue somewhere. And so they do Lollapalooza every year now in Chicago and have for like over a decade.
Wow.
They do it like one weekend over in the summer in this big Mamma Jamma Park right in downtown Chicago. And it's huge and highly sought after. And now they're going global. They did one a few years ago in like Mumbai or something, like in India. Jeez. They've never had a concert like that in India at all. Like they do it. They're going to Brazil or Rio. I don't even know. So anyway, and Perry Farrell's just sitting there doing his interview and he's in his, his fancy coat and his jaunty scarf and, he's got his stage makeup on and it's like, he's an old man. He's in his 60s now, and it's like, he's still got the spirit of Perry Farrell, right? You can tell but it's like he's doing well for himself now,
Good for you, Perry. That's interesting.
But anyway, Pearl Jam was on. The reason why I say that is that Pearl Jam was on like the second or third year, and it was like a big fucking deal because when they announced them, they were nobody. But like right before that summer tour started, like 10 dropped and they became like one of the biggest acts ever. And so they were this huge draw for the tour that year. And it was kind of amazing and unprecedented. And it's worth watching. It's an interesting watch to see the evolution of that concert series and like how it started and what it became. And anyway.
That's so cool. Wow. This is unintentional foreshadowing for my story today a little bit.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's almost like you're in my brain.
I do. It's almost like we're related and we do this
Get
a lot.
out of my brain.
I want to do an update.
Oh, okay.
Real quick.
Great.
There's an update in the case of Marcellus Williams, the man on death row in Missouri. So he had a hearing where they were supposed to allowing the new DNA evidence, right? And so what happened is they went to court and So you guys know that they tested it. It was been like 7 years since they did those independent tests and they found other men's DNA on the weapon, right? On the knife. But after they met, the prosecutor had to admit that his office mishandled the knife.
Oh.
And so they are not allowing that DNA evidence. The original prosecution team mishandled it. And so that makes the DNA evidence unusable. And there was also, they had previously destroyed the bloody fingerprints.
Oh.
So they have no other way to, there's no other new evidence that they could go through or they could present at this trial. And so the state is arguing that his execution should proceed. And he is scheduled to be executed. I believe it's the 24th of September.
Oh my gosh.
Which is ironic because it was the DA that was supportive of him being exonerated.
Right.
As well. I mean,
This is terrible.
it's awful.
I fucking hate that. It's not a good update.
I'm sorry. Well, I mean,
It's okay. It's all right.
he's trying to, at the very least, get his sentence commuted, but I think it's the governor that has to do that. And the governor has declined to do that.
Wow. Is there any petitions going around?
I believe the Innocence Project that is helping Marcellus with this case still has a petition going around. If you go back to the original episode that I covered this on, which I think was 198, one of the links in my sources is a link to that petition.
All right. I believe I signed it at the time. So if anybody didn't, get on it. If it's still active, get on it.
Sorry for the not good update, but I figured you'd want the update because I wanted the update. So.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
What are you drinking, sister?
Oh, thank you for asking. It's called 100 Nails. It's a Pinot Noir.
Why is it always like a number of things?
Well, because I don't know. Fucking I don't know.
I don't know either. It's a thing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like
I
3
do.
pants,
For
9 lives. I don't.
There was 7 deadly zins. There was 14 hands, and a partridge in a pear tree.
There was definitely something about pants. One time. I remember that. You know what? I decided to get into the spirit and I have my little baby can of Fever Tree ginger beer. I haven't had any of it yet. I know. Isn't it adorable?
It really is adorbs.
I'm going to.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Getting wild.
Do we have any business, any good of the order stuff to cover?
I don't have any pod business, but I did post on our, we're going to just keep lying to people, on our not yet dormant social media pages that my band Tinfoil Top Hat currently has an Indiegogo campaign going for helping to recoup some of the production costs of our newest EP. So check that out.
Heck yes.
It's called The Caged Goliath. You could also just go to the Indiegogo website and type in The Caged Goliath. And we've got a little video explaining the album with some B-roll stuff in there. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Is the album available yet?
No, we're doing a cascading launch. So first song drops on September 7th.
Okay. Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Thanks.
I have a crime for you.
I want to hear it.
All right. I'm just going to dive right in here. Okay.
Okay.
So it's September 30th, 2005. 10-year-old Robin Doan dialed 911 and told the operator, "Ma'am, there was a shootout in my house. I don't know who's alive in my house. My parents are Michelle Conrad and Brian Conrad. My mom is pregnant and my brother is in high school. Please, can you just send someone out here? I think I'm the only one alive. I'm 10 years old and I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I so hope my mom is not dead. I want my mommy. I want my mom."
Oh my God.
Robin lived in a farmhouse on the outskirts of the small panhandle town of Pampa, Texas. In the middle of the night, a man had kicked open the side door to the house and shot everyone inside. Robin's mom, Michelle, was 35 and 6 months pregnant. Robin's stepdad, Brian Conrad, was 31. He was a farmer. And her older brother, Zach, who was 14. They were all killed in their beds.
God.
Robin heard all this, the shots, her mom screaming, the killer moving through the house. She got out of bed and she watched from through her partially open bedroom door at the other end of the hallway from her parents' room, and she saw the killer walk out of their room. So before he got to her room, Robin ran back to her bed, leapt up under the covers, and waited. And he came to her room and he shot at her twice.
Oh my God.
The first shot grazed her left leg and arm. The second shot missed her and struck a plastic drawer by her bedside. Robin groaned and fell to the ground, fooling the killer into believing that she was dead.
God. That's so smart.
So fucking smart.
So fucking smart.
She continued to play dead, listening to noises outside her room. She heard the man go into her brother's room and shoot Zach 3 times. After he killed her family, she heard him rummaging around in the kitchen for food, but she wasn't sure when he actually finally left. Later, Robin would tell a reporter, quote, "I played dead for 2.5 hours. I was like, I can't just lay here. I need to do something. And so I just proceeded out the door and started dialing 911. So Robin grabbed the cordless phone and went out to the driveway to make the call. When the sheriff deputies arrived, Robin was still standing in her driveway wearing purple pajamas with polar bears on them and white Nike socks with purple rings around the tops.
Oh.
The sheriffs were baffled that Robin was the sole survivor, and Robin was struggling to come to terms with this herself. One of the first responders told her that everything was going to be okay and they were going to figure it out. He went out and fed the animals with her. Speaking of it years later, Robin said, quote, "Finally, I kind of got the courage to just come right out and say, Mom and Brian aren't going to walk out of there, are they? Broke the law enforcement people's hearts when they had to tell me no, that they weren't walking out of there. I was the only one that could walk out of there still alive."
Jesus. She's 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, little pumpkin.
They secured the scene and collected evidence. They found bullet casings all through the house. Brian had been shot 3 times. Michelle, 6. Zach, also 3. Trigger warning for harm to animals. The dog was shot twice.
Oh.
There were some footprints found on the property, but no fingerprints and no DNA. Investigators were also able to link the shell casing to an AK-47 rifle, and there were tire tracks on the property belonging to an unknown vehicle. Michelle was born on October 1st, 1969 in Grand Prairie, Texas, and graduated from Pampa High School in 1989. She worked at the Gray County Farm Bureau for about a decade. Prior to meeting her husband, Brian, she had 2 kids, Zach and Robin, with another man, and was living the single mom life when she met Brian. She married Brian Conrad in January of 2003.
And this
Brian,
is 2005?
This is 2005.
Gosh, they're like newlyweds. Oh.
Yeah. Brian was born May 2nd, 1974 in Abilene, Texas, and he grew up in a loving house with his parents, Mike and Sharon, and his sister, Kimberly. After graduating from Cleburne High School in 1992, he went to Clarendon College, where he studied farm and ranch management, and then went on to earn a degree in agriculture from Oklahoma Panhandle State University. Putting his education and degrees to use, Brian began operating his family farm and ranch in Pampa, Texas.
Wow.
Michelle and Brian were active in 4-H and members of the Briarwood Full Gospel Church. Brian and Michelle were excited for the addition to the family that was a few months away, baby Michael.
Oh.
Zach was born August 20th, 1991 in Pampa, Texas. Zach loved baseball, track, and air rifles. He was also an integral member of the gospel choir at their church.
Little guy.
I mean, he was 14.
Still. Why? You're just on this children dying kick.
I didn't.
Let's get off of that
I'm sick.
merry-go-round.
It's just...
No, keep going.
Okay. So police had no leads. This was a well-liked family with no known enemies. And not having any idea who did this or why, police put Robin, her biological dad, and her stepmom into protective custody to make sure that whoever did this didn't come back to finish the job once they found out that Robin had lived.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks go by, no movement on the case. And then a call comes in from McDonald County, Missouri. The authorities had a man in custody there for a double homicide in their county, and he had just confessed to killing 4 other people in Texas.
What the fuck?
The man had been picked up the day after Robin's family had been massacred. He was in El Paso coming back from Mexico. When the border agents questioned him, he admitted that he had guns in his vehicle, which of course got their attention. Mm-hmm. After running the tags on the Dodge Dakota truck the man was driving, they found that it was a stolen truck with quite possibly a murder suspect inside.
What kind of dumbass takes a stolen truck with guns over the border? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
El Paso police detained the man, held and questioned him until the investigators from Missouri arrived. Just 15 minutes into the interview, he calmly confessed to killing Orly McCool and his daughter-in-law, Dawn. Orly and Dawn had lived in Pineville, Missouri. Orly Wade McCool was born February 23rd, 1935, to Chester and Elma McCool in Jane, Missouri. He grew up in a loving household with 3 brothers and a sister. Orly joined the Army right after graduating from high school in Wichita, Kansas. He served in Japan after studying at a language school in Monterey, California. He joined the Grantham School of Electronics in Kansas City, Missouri, and then opened up an electronics shop in Neosho. In 1974, he relocated to Shell Knob, Missouri, where he owned a restaurant. And about a decade later, in February of 1984, he operated Stakeout Restaurant in Jane, Missouri, back to where he'd come from. Orly married Wilma Miller, and they raised 3 kids together. Their son, Michael McCool, was married to Laura Dawn Burr. The 2 had a son, Matthew. Dawn was born July 13th, 1958 in Neosho, Missouri. She had 1 sister, Karen, and Dawn was a Christian woman who always put the needs of others ahead of her own. She graduated from Neosho High School and went to Crowder College. She worked at Walmart starting in the late 80s until July of 2005. Dawn was described as a great mother, sister, daughter, friend, and everything in between.
Oh.
Michael had passed away earlier that year, April 27th of 2005. So Orly lost a son. Dawn lost her husband. Matthew lost his dad. Dawn was living with Orly in Pineville, a rural town in the very southwest corner of Missouri.
Oh, this poor kid. Matthew has lost both of his parents in the same year.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Right. So less than 24 hours before Robin's family was all killed in their beds, Orly and Dawn had been murdered at the McCool residence. After not being reachable by phone for most of that morning, one of the family members drove over to the McCool house to check in on Orly and Dawn and found them both shot to death in their home. When the sheriffs arrived, they immediately found a bunch of strange shell casings. One deputy sheriff said it was like a different kind of ammo, not something you'd find at like Walmart. Mm-hmm. Another deputy that had worked a bunch of crime scenes in the past said that he had just taken a burglary report the night before from a man that lived just down the road, Scott King. Scott had reported that his son, Levi, had come into the house while Scott was gone and broke into his gun safe and stole several guns. And some of the ammo was the same kind found at the McCool residence. Now McDonald County had a suspect for this double murder. Orly's Dodge Dakota was also missing, so by 11 a.m. that morning, McDonald County sheriffs had a warrant out for Levi's arrest, and the truck entered into the nationwide system as stolen. It would be 2 weeks after Levi King was stopped and detained in El Paso and brought back to Missouri that he would just volunteer the information about the family he murdered in Pampa.
What the hell? What?
Levi had been asking detention officers in the jail to talk to the detective. And when Levi finally did, he said, "You know there's 4 more in Texas."
Oh my God, I just got chills. Just matter of fact.
Mm-hmm. So he's sitting in Missouri on murder charges for Orly and Don McCool stealing Orly's truck.
Uh-huh.
And oh, by the way, there's 4 others.
Oh my God. Like he's proud or something.
It's wild.
Mm-hmm.
The detective didn't initially know whether or not to believe him. He'd been in jail for like 2 weeks at that point. No one else seemed to be hunting him down. Nobody was questioning him. The detective wasn't really sure why Levi was saying this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, was this even real? Was this true? But Levi described the location of this supposed 4 other murders he'd committed in Texas, and he talked about a big cross. The detective knew exactly where he was talking about because there's only a couple that are that big that stand out like that. That's when the McDonald County sheriffs reached out to investigators in the Texas Panhandle near that big cross and asked, "Hey, you have any open homicides?" And that's when all the pieces started to fall into place and the whole picture became clear. Levi King was a native of McDonald County and by all accounts had a rough upbringing. He was one of 7 kids that lived in poverty with their violent dad, Steve. Scott. Scott was, I think I typed Steve when I meant to type Scott. Yeah.
Michael has this theory that it's just like the generic name for men. When we go to like Starbucks or we're anywhere where they're like, "Can I get a name on the order?" He just says Steve every time.
Which is ironic because his name is Michael. And, like,
I know.
the most common name.
I know.
The most common name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Scott was said to be obsessed with weapons, owned many guns, and he sometimes killed family pets in front of his kids.
What the fuck?
People who were close to the King family said the King house was a fucking mess with exposed wires and insulation everywhere and no boundaries. Drugs and alcohol were always accessible to the King kids. Levi's sister would later tell the court about horrific acts of violence their dad inflicted on their mom and on Levi. She said she watched her dad hold a gun to her mom's head.
Where is mom?
Unclear.
Oh, okay.
One of the 7 kids, Spencer, 13 at the time, was accidentally shot to death after Scott just gave him and his friend a gun.
Oh my God.
After the funeral, Scott made all the boys handle guns so they wouldn't be afraid just because their brother was dead.
Oh, this guy should not be in the care of 7 children.
Right.
Or any living anything.
Right. No living anything.
Mm-mm.
Right.
God.
When Levi was 20, he went to prison for burglary and burning down his neighbor's house. He received a 14-year sentence, but he only served 17 months when he was paroled for good behavior.
It went from 14 years to 17 months?
Yes.
What kind of good behavior policies do we have going on in Missouri?
Which is crazy, right? Because Missouri is the same state where they're about to probably execute an innocent man. Who's been in prison for decades at this point.
Okay, wow. What's going on there?
So he was sent to a halfway house in St. Louis. And in the fall of 2005, he ran away from that halfway house and headed back to the southwest corner of Missouri. Mm-hmm. On September 29th, Levi got himself to Scott's place in Pineville, where the two got into an argument, and Scott kicked Levi out of his house and told him never to come back. Levi claims that this set him off, so he went back to his dad's house and stole 3 guns: an AK-47, a 9mm handgun, and a hunting rifle. He fled down the road, presumably on foot, and came upon the McCool residence, where he saw Orly and Don leaving the house. Levi broke in and waited, and when Orly and Don returned, he shot Orly in the head and unloaded multiple rounds into Don, killing them both.
The breaking in and waiting is so creepy.
I hate it.
I hate it too.
Police suspect that it had everything to do with Orly's pickup truck because Levi needed wheels. Mm-hmm. Levi went for a drive intending to run off to Mexico to flee the country, heading through Oklahoma on the 40, which is the same freeway I took to get into Oklahoma. I went through the Panhandle.
You did? Did you see the big cross?
No, but I mean, maybe, but I don't remember. I went right through there. That is the path I took through the Panhandle into Oklahoma.
Interesting.
Later, Levi would say that after killing Orly and Dawn, he felt as close to peace as he has ever known, that the anger and fear from the previous years was washed away in an instant.
As close to peace as he had ever known?
But it didn't last, and he wasn't yet in Mexico. So after he crossed out of Oklahoma into the Texas Panhandle, he decided to pull off the freeway and kill again. In the A&E documentary, The Killer Speaks, Levi said, quote, "Just before leaving the house, I looked at myself in the mirror. As to where the first of the murders released me from a great burden, this one had almost no effect. It left me feeling empty." Levi made his way down into Juarez, Mexico, which is the sister city of El Paso, just over the border from Texas. But he got lost and turned around, driving around Juarez, and found himself stuck in line at the border to re-enter the States.
Oh, on accident.
Yes.
God, idiot. God. I've had a fear multiple times of accidentally getting on a ferry.
Right,
you know,
right.
like,
Yeah,
well,
no,
now
just-
I'm just crossing the sound because I fucking took a wrong turn. Yeah. Sounds like something I would do, but still.
But still. Levi took a plea deal in Missouri to avoid execution. He pled guilty to the murders of Orly and Dawn McCool in exchange for 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. And this was April of 2006.
That's just for those charges, though, right?
Right. In Texas, he also hoped a plea of guilty would reduce his sentence from death to life without parole, but the DA refused to take the death penalty off the table. This is Texas.
I know. I'm like,
No one likes killing people more than Texas.
correct.
It would be 4 years after the murder spree, early September 2009, that Levi King would go to trial in Texas to determine his sentencing because he pled guilty. And they said, well, we're still going to have the trial because the DA wants the death penalty and the jury needs to decide this.
Okay.
By this time, Robin was 14, about to turn 15, and she agreed to testify in this trial. She said, quote, "I didn't want to, but I knew that I needed to for my family's sake. I was the only one that got to walk out of that house. They didn't, and they needed a voice too."
Oh, sweetie pie.
She broke down mid-testimony, and no one really expected her to speak again during the trial. But she did speak again, directly to Levi King, when she read her victim impact statement. She told him she forgave him, although later she would say she wasn't quite sure why she said that. She said, maybe I just wanted him to know that I wasn't going to let my life be ruined by him, that I wasn't going to let him take away the best of me. I wanted him to know my life was still going to turn out good, no matter what awful things he had done to me and my family.
Good for her.
The defense, on the other hand, was fighting for Levi's life, literally. They brought in friends and family members, social workers, to really illustrate how fucked up Levi's upbringing had been, the various diagnoses he had received over the years: bipolar, depression, psychosis, at some points schizophrenia. His long history of drug addiction started by Scott, his dad, who smoked weed with Levi and shared alcohol with Levi when he was as young as like 6 years old.
Where were these family members while he was living in this home with like exposed wires and his brother being shot? And
Right?
I mean, yeah. How did you think he was going to turn out?
Right.
Yeah.
By his teens, Levi had moved on to meth and heroin. Very early on, he had shown signs of serious antisocial behavior, setting fires, killing animals. And then there was the environment and the house he grew up in. Overwhelming poverty, the absolute filth of the home, insulation that's just black and melted, one wall that just had this massive display of ceremonial knives and swords. There's guns everywhere. May not have had money for food, but there was always money for ammunition,
Yeah. Ew.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But on October 6, 2009, the jury returned with a sentence of life without parole. The death penalty requires a unanimous decision, and one juror held out on the death penalty. Robin went to live with an aunt for a while, and then with her dad and his new wife, who lived just outside of Pampa. Whenever he took her somewhere, she hunkered down in his pickup truck so people wouldn't stare at her. She stayed out of school for a few months, and when she went back, the other kids didn't really know what to say to her. Yeah. After the trial, she did her best to lead a normal teenage life. She became a cheerleader at Pampa High School. She briefly played on the girls' basketball team. During the summer, she worked at the local water amusement park where she saved a little boy who was drowning.
God.
She graduated from high school in 2013. A group of police officers raised $10,000 to help her pay for junior college, where she was a cheerleader there too.
Wow, that's incredible.
She said the whole town of Pampa has watched her grow up, just kind of waiting for her to mess up and have some kind of breakdown, which she refused to do. She said she dyed her hair a different color once, and then word spread that she was finally going off the deep end.
Okay.
But, yeah.
God.
Texas. Amber, it's Texas. God. Small town Texas. But she kept her head on her shoulders. She said she was raised better than that. Mm-hmm. Robin says the worst days now are the birthdays, her mom's, her brother's, Brian's, even her own, because she doesn't like celebrating without them. And the last thing I could find said that she planned to go into pediatric nursing to help kids who get hurt, who need help, and that she felt like her mom would like that a lot.
Yeah.
And that is the story of the murders of Levi King.
Wow. Oh, Robin, what a badass.
Totally.
Jesus.
Total badass.
Uh-huh. Oh, fuck.
I'm sorry, sister. I didn't mean for it to...
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't. And you know what? I did not go looking for that episode because I didn't want to watch a whole thing. I don't even know why A Killer Speaks is a show. It's really giving a platform to the wrong person in that story.
Yeah, it is. I can see the benefit in trying to understand the psychology to maybe help prevent things like this. But unfortunately, it's probably done in such a way that it's just watching a train wreck. It's entertainment,
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I don't know either. There was, remember that one story? I got really far into it. I can't even remember who it was now. And I watched that show. I did the story. And then when I was looking for additional sources, every source I found said that the family was pissed about The Killer Speaks. And they didn't appreciate that she got to have a voice. So I just didn't do the story at all. I just scrapped it and started over.
You're never mind. Not doing that.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh. But, that was a good one, sister. I mean, that was a bad good one.
It was horrible, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is going to not really be a palate cleanser. It won't be terrible.
Okay.
We're going to talk today about Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Oh, does this end up with them stealing a body and running off into the desert with it?
Oh, no. Okay, we're going to talk about the Lynyrd Skynyrd plane crash.
Oh, okay. Oh no, I'm thinking of a different band. There is.
Oh, I was like, whoa.
No, there was a band. God, that's gonna bug me now. And somebody who's listening is screaming. It's probably April, screaming at us right now because there was another band in that time frame. It might have been someone in America. Anyway, they died and they wanted to be buried in the desert, and so their famous musician friends literally stole the body from the morgue and took it off and buried it the way he wanted to be buried. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Let's talk about Lynyrd Skynyrd.
This is an interesting, weird... I thought we talked about this on the pod, but I think we talked about it at Prono Pup Night, where...
You guys... If you haven't seen the video of Prono Pup Night, you need to make a TikTok and go find us on TikTok and see our video about Prono Pup Night. It is so good. They were so delicious. Sorry, I got sidetracked. You mentioned Prono Pups. I want Prono Pups again.
Yeah, we'll do it again. And we'll do Dick's Burgers.
Well, Sebastian needs to be included too because he saw the video and he was like,
Does he know what Prono Pups are?
No,
but he's...
No, but he saw the video, so now he has an idea, and now he wants to eat them. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
do that. Yeah, I'd
Okay.
love that. But anyway, I was telling you, I think that night about how Michael and I watched that really great documentary about the making of the Rumors album.
Yes.
And then, you know how like they'll recommend something to you after you finish watching that thing. And it recommended to us the making of the Gorge, like how it came to be.
You told me about that. Yeah.
And ironically, this was the very first show I ever saw at the Gorge was Lynyrd Skynyrd. And then also to play off of what you were saying earlier, one of the things they were talking about in this documentary was how specifically seeing Pearl Jam at the Gorge is like a spiritual experience. And Michael was like, oh man, I bet it is. And I was like, yeah, I've seen Pearl Jam at the Gorge. He's like, what the fuck? I'm like, oh yeah. And it's true. It was a spiritual experience.
Which is crazy because, okay, two things. One, I have to say this. You saw Lynyrd Skynyrd. I'm putting air quotes in that because if it doesn't have the original lineup, it's not the band anymore. First of all, so I do the same thing when anybody tells me they went and saw Sublime or Alice in Chains. You did not see Alice in Chains.
I'm sorry.
You saw a tribute band. You saw.
That is not how bands work.
No, that is how bands work. Second of all,
Okay.
that's
You know that
wild.
like Fleetwood Mac had different members at one point. The Beatles had a different drummer. I mean, it happens.
But when we're talking about the front person, though.
Okay, well, I take issue with the vocalist always being referred to as the front person. I'll start there.
We are digressing so hard. But I have to say this. Back to what you were saying about a spiritual experience of seeing Pearl Jam at the Gorge. When we didn't just see Pearl Jam at the Gorge, first of all. We saw Pearl Jam at the Gorge the first night of a weekend of shows that they did. I think they did 2 shows that weekend, back to back. And it was the first time that they had played the Gorge in over a decade. And they played an extra long show for us. And it was like literally the hottest day of the year. It was 100 degrees that day. And I just happened to get to go because you guys had an extra ticket. And Sebastian's dad was pissed that I was going and he wasn't, which is bullshit because he'd seen Pearl Jam before. So fuck him. But anyway, I hope he hears this. Anyway, when I came back, because I don't do a lot of concerts. You know I'm not a huge concert goer.
Right.
I came back. I'd been to the Gorge like once or twice before that. And when I got home for like the next 3 days, I was like randomly crying for no fucking reason. And I was talking with Sebastian's dad about it as we were getting high on bong rips.
Sure.
And he said, well, of course you're like emotional and processing because you had a spiritual experience. And I was like, what? He was like, well, you went to the desert with a group of people to like listen to music. It doesn't really matter if it's like 5 of you around a fire or 50,000 of you at the Gorge. Like that's a spiritual experience. And I was like, what? And he was like, why do you think I go to concerts? And I was like, I didn't know it could be like this. I didn't know it could be like that.
Well, it's not always like that. There's something special about the Gorge and there's something special about Pearl Jam.
It's true. It's true. That was an incredible day.
Yeah, it was.
It was an incredible
that we had
day.
An extra ticket and that you came.
Me too.
Because we will always have that.
We will always have Pearl Jam at the Gorge in 100-degree weather. What year was that? Sebastian was like 2 years old. Sebastian was like 2 years old.
2008, maybe?
2007?
Maybe, yeah. Somewhere in there.
Somewhere in
there. It was
there?
the last time I went to the Gorge. I think I've aged out.
Like 17 years ago.
Wow. Okay, so Lynyrd Skynyrd, saw him at the Gorge. There was mullets everywhere.
Almost as many as you see at Safeco Stadium.
Budweisers and mullets galore.
I still call it Safeco. I don't give a fuck what they call it now.
Samesies. Okay, so the original frontman was Ronnie Van Zant. And Ronnie met Gary Rossington and Bob Burns when they were playing baseball against each other as teenagers.
Okay.
It was 1964, and Ronnie hit a foul ball that hit Bob in the head and knocked him out.
And they were fast friends ever since.
Yep, that's all it takes. Ronnie went over to see if he was all right, which he was. And the three boys started talking and learned that they were all musicians. And so they all decided to get together and jam at Bob's parents' house.
Hell yeah.
I remember a good jam as a teenager.
Yeah, we know. We know what that's about.
Okay. So Bob played the drums, Gary played guitar, and Ronnie was a singer.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Collins and Larry Junstrom later joined, and they started playing local gigs in their hometown of Jacksonville, Florida. Florida, yeah.
Okay.
Which is weird, right?
Uh-huh.
I guess it's Southern, but I don't think of it as like proper
what's
Southern.
So funny. Aaron, I'm talking to Wonder Woman. Aaron we were laughing about this because when I was down there and we were hanging out, we went to a restaurant and it was like, oh yeah, blah, 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 Southern on the menu. And I was like, oh, I guess Florida is the South, huh? She was like, yeah, it's part of the South. And I was like, I don't ever think of Florida as part of the South, but it's totally part of the South. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you think of it as just tropical.
Well, Florida's like its own thing, you know?
It's its own planet, really. I know. No offense, Wonder Woman. What are we doing? Although Missouri's giving you a run for the money right now.
Oh,
like.
Missouri will always give a run for the money, a race to the bottom. Missouri is racing to the bottom.
All right. So Jacksonville, Florida. So the band was first called My Backyard, then the Noble Five, and then the 1%. Yeah. They changed the name to Lynyrd Skynyrd in 1969 after a PE teacher from Robert E. Lee High School. The teacher's name was actually Lynyrd Skynyrd, and he didn't like male students with long hair.
Lynyrd Skynyrd. Mr. Skinner. Isn't that the principal, the bald-haired angry principal in the Back to the Future movies?
I think so.
Yes. There's like a family line of Skinners on this planet, and they all have the same vibe.
Yeah. Okay. BT Dubs. No, it's going to take me
it's fine.
forever. On Apple TV, there is a wonderful documentary about Michael J. Fox.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So Lynyrd Skynyrd, he didn't like the male students with long hair. Gary Rossington, along with his parents, repeatedly went to the school to try to get this PE teacher to lay off. But when he wouldn't, Gary ended up dropping out of school.
Okay.
I guess this guy was just a relentless fuck. But
Sure.
Before too long, the band had gone from playing bar gigs to opening for the Rolling Stones.
Wow.
So
They were like high school kids?
Yeah, like middle finger to the PE teacher, right?
Right?
You long-haired hooligans aren't going to make anything out of yourself.
They're like, hold my beer, literally.
Yeah. Yes.
Hold my Budweiser.
Hold my Budweiser. Get me a hair bobble for my mullet. We're going in.
Yes.
Okay. By 1974, the lineup, along with Ronnie, Gary, and Bob, was bassist Leon Wilkinson, keyboardist Billy Powell, and drummer Artemis Pyle, which, what a great name. Artemis Pyle.
Yeah.
And then also guitarist Steve Gaines. So if you're following all that, the band had 3 guitarists.
Okay.
Which was part of why they were so unique in their sound. They had like this triple threat thing going on with 3 guitars.
Uh-huh.
They also had, I hate this, but backup singers called the Hunkettes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah. Anything with ets.
So gross.
Yeah. Of the Hunkettes was Cassie Gaines, who was Steve's sister, and Joe Billingsley and Leslie Hawkins. Okay. So there's a lot of names, and
There's
they
a
probably
lot
won't
going
ever
on
become
here.
clear. There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack here. Okay. At the height of their fame in the 1970s, the band popularized the Southern rock genre with such songs as Sweet Home Alabama and Freebird.
Mm-hmm.
Man, some of their stuff is good.
Yeah, I know. I mean, at this point, it's like, it's so overplayed. Like, it's like, I cannot, there's certain music that's like, if I never hear it again, I'll be okay. You know? Because I've heard it so much.
Is it all Lynyrd Skynyrd or just like those popular songs?
No, it's not just Lynyrd Skynyrd. There's other stuff. I mean, I don't ever need to hear Stairway to Heaven ever again. you know?
Sure. No stairway denied.
Exactly.
So Ronnie and his wife Judy married in 1972 and had a daughter they named Melody. And Ronnie, up to that point, was extremely erratic. He was a loose cannon. He had a drinking problem, and bandmates said that once he consumed alcohol, he would go from being your best friend to unstable and confrontational.
Those are the worst drunks.
I know.
The absolute worst drunks.
I've known a few of those where you're
Me
being
too.
syrupy sweet because just even the wrong look and it's all
flying
over
off
with
the
for
handle.
night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Other band members were also drinking and using drugs, but it was widely known that Ronnie was just way fucking extra, right?
Right.
And he was one of the primary reasons the band had such a high turnover over the years because former members found it too difficult to work with him.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was after the birth of his daughter that he decided to start making some necessary changes in his life. And
Okay.
he reportedly said, like many, many times, that he didn't believe that he was going to live to see the age of 30. Like he just knew it, which
I mean,
is kind of
a lot of addicts talk like that.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
A lot of us do.
God, this is dark. Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
Gene Odom was a childhood friend of Ronnie's, and he became the band's bodyguard kind of dude. He didn't drink or use any drugs, and he kind of helped keep the band functioning and chilling out on the substance abuse a little bit. Like he would go into dressing rooms before the band and like collect the complimentary alcohol that would often be in there and hand it out to like employees at the venue, you know.
He was their handler.
Yep, he was. He was their handler. On October 17th, 1977, their fifth album was released, titled Street Survivors. And the album cover was the photo of the band with flames all around them. And this album was later pulled as it was a little too on the nose and kind of spooky following the incident that I'm going to tell you about. So this is just days after the album release, October 19th, 1977. The entire band, including Gene and the Hunkettes, boarded a chartered twin-engine plane. They were on their tour for Street Survivor, and they had leased the plane from early October to early November to take them to all of their tour stops.
No buses for them.
No, like the gear is in a bus.
Got it.
Yeah. They take off on October 19th from Lakeland, Florida. Right after takeoff, the engines flare up. Like literally like fire shoots out, and Gene freaks the fuck out and tries to tell the pilots that something was wrong and they need to land the plane. But the pilots are like, everything's fine. Calm down. Just chill out, Gene.
What?
They went on to Greenville, South Carolina, where they landed safely. All was good. After the Greenville show, when it was time to go back on the plane for the next stop, Hunkette, Cassie Gaines, said she didn't want to get on that plane. She's like, I ain't fucking doing it.
Yep.
But the buses and vans with the gear had already left. Other band members also voiced their concerns about the plane, but Ronnie basically tells them, quit your whining, get on the plane. The pilot and the co-pilot also assured everyone that the plane was fine, so everyone sort of reluctantly got on.
Okay.
Yeah. The next day, October 20th, was a day off for the band. They had already done like 8 shows, and rather than stay in Greenville, which was like nothing going on there, they decided to fly to Louisiana, which was their next show, but they wanted to spend their day off in Louisiana because it sounded like more fun.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So Gene is still not feeling good about this plane. So he goes to the airport to talk with the pilots and look at the plane before getting the band on board. And apparently the pilots told Gene that it would be fixed at the next destination.
I'm sorry. At the next destination.
Let's push her one more time. It's just a quick little hippity hop. And we promise we'll do something about it at the next stop.
Do they work for Boeing? What's going on
Maybe.
here? They have
I
stock
don't
in
really
this
know.
fucking plane company? What is happening?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
So Gene's not feeling so good about this. He kind of rips into them, causes an argument. He ends up walking away from that conversation with some choice words for the pilots and told Ronnie that once they were in Louisiana, they were going to get a different plane, whether this plane was fixed or not. Like, this pilot and co-pilot need to get the fuck out of here. We're getting a different plane in Louisiana.
They've got to go.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, hey, ho, ho.
Ho, ho. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this same plane had just flown Fleetwood Mac a few weeks prior. But prior to Lynyrd Skynyrd leasing the plane, Aerosmith was scheduled to lease it for their tour, but they took someone that they knew with them who knew about planes and took one look at it and they were like, yeah, fucking hard pass. No.
So this story could have been about Steven Tyler, but instead it's about Ronnie.
Right? It also could have been about Fleetwood Mac, but they sucked the last bit of life out of this little twin engine that could, I guess.
Okay.
So they're all on board the plane headed to Baton Rouge. About 2 hours into the flight, the engine is struggling and the plane starts to tilt.
Oh, no.
Gene goes up to the pilots and asks what's going on, and the pilots said they were low on fuel but didn't understand why. Like, they're losing fuel. Then the pilots tell Gene to make sure that everyone is buckled and that they were going to have to make an emergency landing.
You don't say.
If I was Gene right now...
Right?
Oh. Yep. So the pilots are able to connect with Houston Air Traffic Control and they receive landing instructions, but they never declared that it was an emergency.
What?
Yeah.
Do these guys actually know how to fly planes? Do these guys have licenses? What is happening?
What would you say you do here?
I can't.
No, I don't know.
There's no adults. There's no adults in the room, Amber. There's
Just
no adults
Gene.
anywhere. There's no, I mean, just in general on the planet. There's no such thing as adults. It's all a ruse. Even your pilot is just a kid playing dress up. No.
Well, you
no
know
one's
what?
actually in charge.
No one's in charge. I have no idea how these private chartered planes work. I have a feeling that it's possible that the plane itself is owned by the pilots. Like, it's all, because it was very similar with a story that I did a long time ago with the Buddy Holly plane crash. And it almost felt like the pilot's ego was like, I want to be the one to fly around Buddy Holly, even though they knew it was dangerous. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. Ego or status or whatever. Who knows? But it was also later learned that one of the reasons that Aerosmith passed on this plane, aside from the fact that it was a pile of shit, was that the band saw both pilots passing a liquor bottle back and forth. They were like, drink and fly us around. That's not happening.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Gene tells everyone that they need to strap in, but Ronnie had taken sleeping pills and he was sound asleep. Artemis was a former Marine and pilot, and he went around to each member and instructed them on how to properly prepare for the crash. But Ronnie would not get up. So the plane starts going down through the pine trees. Survivors would later say that it sounded like baseball bats hitting the outside of the plane.
Yeah.
Oh, God. The cockpit went straight into a tree and the wings were ripped off. And then the plane skidded 140 feet before stopping. And this was in Gillsburg, Mississippi. So the first responder was a farmer whose land was just next to where the plane crashed. And he came out to see what was going on. Like, he came out with a gun and was like, get off my lawn. Like, you know.
This is like Back to the Future when he lands in the barn.
Yeah. Yes.
Single pine.
So many.
Lone Pine. Lone Pine Mall.
So many callbacks in this episode. And also, even at this time, like, he didn't know who these people were.
Right. No,
Like,
he's
what
some
a
old,
weird...
he's like some old farmer dude. He does not give a fuck about Lynyrd Skynyrd or know who they are at all. Right.
Well, no, I mean, I think he knew who Lynyrd Skynyrd was, but you don't often recognize singers by face like And especially in the condition they were all in, just like
Right.
a bunch of dudes, just
Bunch
what
of
a
long
weird-
hairs, just a bunch of
Yeah.
long hairs in his fucking field or whatever.
it's farmer Lynyrd Skynyrd comes out. I told you. Fucking told you. Okay. So both the pilot and co-pilot were deceased on impact, along with vocalist Ronnie Van Zant. The back of the plane was kind of set up like an RV. So there was like a fold-out table of sorts that the members used to play cards on and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Ronnie was asphyxiated by the table and was found like pushed forward and sort of folded into the table wreckage.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Assistant road manager Dean Kilpatrick also died, along with Kevin Elson, their producer. Guitarist Steve Gaines and his sister Cassie Gaines also died.
Oh.
I know. The others on the plane sustained cesareas. There it is. What was it? North Carolina.
North Carolina revival. North Carolina revival.
You know what? I used to drink copious amounts of wine while I did this podcast, and that didn't happen. It's like falls down a well, her eyes go cross. Kicked by a mule to go back straight. I don't know. I mean, God. The fuck? Okay. Sustained serious injuries. Leslie, one of the hunkettes, had severe facial lacerations and broken bones. She was unable to move her head and was on her back and stuck, just like looking up under the plane's rubble.
Ugh.
Uh-huh. Gene had scalp lacerations and acid chemical burns. He was stuck under the plane while flames burned his face and eyes.
Oh, no.
I know. Artemis and one of the sound engineers were the only two that were able to walk, and they followed a creek for an hour until they came to a farm where Farmer Johnny was out investigating what the loud noise was.
Uh-huh.
There was a helicopter in the air, so he thought that maybe something happened at the nearby prison. So when he went outside, he brought his shotgun.
Yeah.
And when he saw these bloodied men coming onto his property, he first threatened to shoot them and fired a warning shot into the air.
Sorry.
And they're like, no. What a weird thing to have happen, right?
I mean,
a loud boom and then like The Walking Dead just coming onto your property from out of the woods.
I just... And there's a prison nearby, so...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
A couple of escaped fucking convicts.
That's
like,
what he thought.
rolling up on his farm.
Mm-hmm. Fuck no. Not on my watch. So they're eventually able to get him to listen, and they explained what happened. So Farmer Johnny, along with a couple of neighbors, got into pickup trucks and four-wheelers and headed to the crash site. While this was happening, the keyboardist, Billy Pyle, had been dragging himself from the wreckage. Trigger warning just for gross. I don't know what to call it. Sorry.
You make me pee my pants.
Sorry. Oh. Okay, he's dragging himself through the wreckage only to discover that his nose was like barely hanging on by a thread.
God.
Mm-hmm. So he used his t-shirt to hold his nose to his face and try to stop the bleeding. So shortly after, Farmer Johnny and friends arrive, and first responders begin to show up, and a command center was set up at Farmer Johnny's. The locals had no idea who was on the plane. They were just there to help. And because the crash site was in such a wooded area, the farmers got tractors and other machinery and started to clear a path so that the first responders could go to the site with stretchers and their gear and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Witnesses to the site said the scene was total chaos. There was musical instruments and gear strewn about everywhere. all you could hear were moans and cries coming from everywhere, people pinned in various areas of the wreckage, and the amount of blood was something out of a horror movie.
God.
Mm-hmm. So Billy Pyle ended up dragging himself to a wing. He props himself up, and that's when he notices that Gene was under the wing with his face all melted, right?
Oh my God.
And Gene reaches his hand up to touch Billy's face, like in almost a loving gesture. But Billy swatted his hand away because he was like trying to keep his nose on. He was like, don't touch my face.
I want to see the movie. Oh my God. What the moment in the movie?
Not now, Gene. My nose is falling off. We'll hug it out later.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
That is so weird. Oh. Okay, so when the EMTs get there, there's not enough stretchers to go around. So farmers are filling the back of their pickup trucks with hay and transporting people to the hospital that way. Some of the people that showed up to help started looting some of the band members who were unable to do anything about it because of their condition. Like people were taking their wallets and jewelry and shit.
What?
Yeah. Somehow word got around and there ended up being like several hundred people at the crash site. Like word got around that it was Lynyrd Skynyrd somehow. And people are looting.
What the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
That is insane.
I know. It's the deep south. It's the deep south. I know. Mm-hmm.
Because they wanted like Lynyrd Skynyrd fucking souvenirs from their tragedy.
Yeah. I guess.
Holy
it's just gross.
Shit.
It's gross.
That is so gross.
Mm-hmm. When toxicology is done on the pilot and co-pilot, it came back that they had no drugs or alcohol in the system. And the crash was because, you know, the plane was a piece of shit and it shouldn't have been in the air. Gene Odom struggled quite a bit after the crash and felt responsible because he didn't fight harder to get the band to not get on the plane.
Oh.
That's so sad. The album Street Survivors had the cover replaced with a similar band photo against a black background and removed the flames that they appeared to be engulfed in. But the fiery cover was used later for an anniversary release. The album sold over 500,000 copies and went platinum. Ronnie's
you
younger
could go
brother...
platinum for over 500,000 copies.
I know, right? I
it's
thought
like platinum. Don't
like,
you need millions?
Isn't that gold? Isn't that just like a little gold nugget? What do you mean? When you actually had to go to the record store and purchase an album.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ronnie's younger brother, Johnny, took over as the vocalist in the late 80s, and the band made a comeback. Yep, I saw the comeback tour. Johnny does sound a lot like Ronnie. He said he isn't trying to replace his brother. He's just trying to honor his music and keep it alive.
I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
They do sound similar. And that's the story of the Lynyrd Skynyrd plane crash.
That was horrific.
Mm-hmm.
That was awful.
I'm sorry.
I mean, there was lots of laughing in there, but that was awful. That was awful.
Yeah.
Wait, so how many people were on the plane and how many died?
I think there was like, I don't know how many were on the plane. 8 people died.
8 people died?
Yeah, I think there was like 15 to 20 people on the plane because they had like crew and, you know. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm assuming, did you watch a documentary about this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that like the guy who almost lost his nose and the guy who had acid burning his face, is like they're not the same, right? Mm-mm, like they have permanent damage from that.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. I mean, and that's the thing too, right? Like when you get like reports of like tragic events when people are like, you know, so many people died and like so many people were wounded. It's like you hear wounded and you're like, oh, they put a Band-Aid on, and it's like, no, wounded means they didn't die, but that can mean so much more than like some cuts and scrapes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you lose a limb and you're counted as wounded.
Mm-hmm.
You
if
know,
you just have a cut or a scrape after being in a plane crash, some sort of miracle happened.
Right?
They were all seriously wounded.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like forever altered wounded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Sister, Well, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
We did it. We made it through, even with all of our offshoots and tangents.
So sorry.
We made it. No, don't ever apologize for tangents. You know I love a tangent.
I had a lot today.
So did I.
Okay. All right. We're on Patreon.
Yep.
And we have a website.
Yep.
And we have a Gmail.
Yep. crimewineandchaos@gmail.com. You send all your letters there, but Amber reads the love letters. I read the hate mail.
Correct.
And if you join the Chaos Kids Club on the Patreon for $5 a month, you get a bonus episode every month. You get the new episodes every week dropped a day early for you. And every once in a while, we have a virtual wine night. So head on over and join the club.
And if you want to know what a Pronopup is, go check out our TikTok page.
Yeah.
Let me know if you want the recipe. I got you.
We already have a request for the recipe. So
Perfect.
We might have to put that on the Patreon or something,
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Do that. Wonderful.
Sister, I love you.
I love you.
That was fucking chaotic.
So chaotic.
Goodbye.
Bye. Crime, Wine, and Chaos is produced by 8th Direction Records. Artwork by Joshua M. Davis. Music by Paul Abner. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our Patreon page at crimewineandchaos.com/Patreon. Cheers.
You're gonna have to. This is gonna require some editing on your part at some point. I'm sure. I'm sorry. I apologize for this because I gotta open up my phone and go find the TikTok that I saved that will tell me so I could get it right.